Okay, so the best way to think of the valve train is the breathing apparatus the engine has. Okay, without the valves, this thing couldn't breathe. Without breathing, it ain't going nowhere. You wouldn't go very far if you couldn't breathe. Same thing with the engine. And also keep in mind, anything that obstructs or restricts the breathing on the engine is going to have a direct result on the output, the power of the output, the fuel it uses, how hot it is when it operates, elevated operating temperatures, and component life. Okay? So a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of minor low power complaints can be traced back to the engine's not breathing well. Be it a dirty air filter, or the valve lash is set incorrectly, or simply worn, or some kind of restriction when the engine tries to exhale, breathe out, exhaust. Okay? So, typically, that's your upper end. That's the top end of the engine. Okay, so you have a lot of components up there. You've got camshaft, this little thing here. Okay, camshaft. We'll get to that Wednesday when we start disassembling the blocks and related hardware in there. Okay. That's what operates your rocker arms. You've got your cylinder head. That's basically the foundation for the upper components. Okay. Valve train related hardware. The upper end, this whole thing is called the valve train. Okay. You think of it as a subset, if you will, if you're in a math, a subset of the engine components. The valve train is the part or the system that's responsible for the single engine. Okay? The gear train is what sets that cam's position in relationship to where the piston is in the bore. If that camshaft is out of position, so the valves don't open at the appropriate time, oh, you're going to have all kinds of fun. You'll have catastrophic failure, if it even starts. If you're having a really bad day, you'll set it all up, you'll put it together, you'll get the timing wrong, you go to bar it over to set the valves, and you'll run a valve into a piston and bend the valve. If you're really, really having a bad day and not thinking about it, you'll use the starter to bar the motor over to try and set the valves up, and it'll really run the valve through the piston. And I've seen guys do that. So when we start reassembling this engine, how many of you guys have rebuilt engines? Automotive, okay. So all of you guys, a lot of you have. Now, anytime you put a component in an engine, be it a main cap, a rod cap, a piston, at least when I build them, I would bar the motor over. Because if it doesn't turn, then I know the last thing I did is probably what's not making it turn. I've seen guys put whole engines together, put them in the vehicle, go to bar it over to set the valves, and it doesn't turn.
When you say turn, do you just turn it with a wrench, or?
We put in what's called barring it over. It's manually rotating the engine over, and because it's got injectors or spark plugs in it, and it's got compression, you usually have to use a large breaker bar. And you put it on the socket on the front pulley, and you manually rotate the engine. I've seen whole engines go in vehicles, the drivetrain gets connected, everything, and the guy's like, oh, I just got to run the valves, call the guy, tell him to come down in a couple hours, we'll be ready to go. And he goes to bar it over to run the valves.
And it doesn't take much.
Nope. Now, this guy was not the smartest bulb in the chandelier, so he went and got a snipe, a big cheater bar. Bang! Who goes now? Yeah, you spent the valve. So he took a little problem, about 6 hours, 8 hours of work, and turned it into a catastrophe. And he's already called the guy to come down and get the truck. Yeah, it does. It sucks to be his manager, because the guy who's going to come down and bitch and complain, he's going to bitch and complain to the manager.
I seen where it ran. There was a guy that did one, Volvo D13 in a coach bus. And it ran, but it ran kind of crappy.
Horribly bad, yeah.
Yeah, and we got codes, camshaft correlation codes.
Oh, sure.
And it turns out that it was off one tube.
Yep.
The cam was just off one tube.
And it's in the bus,
Yeah.
everything's on it,
Yeah.
and now you gotta pull the cam out of it.
Yeah.
Nothing like doing a job 2 and 3 times.
Yeah.
I love it. And the 2 and 3 times is on the shop's dime, not the customer.
Yeah.
What's a tooth?
One gear tooth.
Tooth is this,
Gear train.
Okay.
This
Oh,
is the
okay.
tooth.
right here.
Molar? Wisdom?
Right here.
Okay.
All you gotta do is have one tooth off. And if it runs, it will run horribly bad. Depending on the engine, it may not even run, and depending on the engine, you might run a valve into a piston. Okay? So, I mean, it can go from bad to worse in a hurry. Okay? This is something we forgot to take out, Frank. I was looking at this the other day and I'm like, what the heck?
You'll see it for sure. I'm going back together.
Pre-chamber.
Oh, diesel.
Yeah. That one and the pre-chambered one.
Well, you can talk about it.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sure that there's some people that are still running diesels, like, we got
Some
two.
that
yeah, and we got two. Well, no, our contingency fleet,
Some mechanical.
yeah, we got about 24.
What about the big yellow?
The what?
The big, the yellow,
Big yellow bus?
yeah.
Oh, that's a 1929 white. Yeah,
Oh, Old Yeller?
Old Yeller.
Yellow,
That's a gasoline engine.
That's a gasoline.
Gasoline?
Yeah, they got one. They got the sister to it up in Big Bear at Northington Inn.
Do we still own that? I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it, but I
It's a base one.
it's a base one. I
Yeah,
assume
it's
we
in a
still.
container.
They keep it in the,
Yeah, they got this. They got the sister to that up in Big Bear, and they use it during the parades up there. This is like 4th of July and stuff. It's really cool.
They used to take it down and run it in the Rose Parade.
Rose Parade.
Yeah,
not anymore, wasn't there
No.
this year?
wasn't in it this year.
I think the last year they had to tow it through the Rose Parade. The last time they took
Nope.
it.
Not this Rose Parade, but the last one. Remember that float that caught fire and they had to tow it? Oh, that was a nightmare. All right, so
Anyway.
this is an older slide. It kind of stayed in the program, but it talks about a diesel engine or a combustion ignition engine. Now, what's the difference between a spark ignited and a combustion ignition? Anybody know?
No spark plug.
Well, okay. What ignites the fuel-air mixture in a diesel engine?
Friction.
Indirect, well, yeah,
Compression.
but compression which generates what? Heat. So it's the heat of compression on a diesel or a diesel engine that when you introduce a volatile fluid, we'll call it diesel fuel, it spontaneously ignites, releases the heat of the fuel and pushes down on top of the piston, right?
Yeah.
Okay, anybody know where the first production combustion ignition engine went into service?
I think he spoke about this.
Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah, beer.
They made beer.
Yeah.
But it wasn't an engine like you see today. It was very rudimentary. It ran on coal dust.
Told us,
Until a young engineer came along and created a better injection system in it. A fellow named Robert Bosch.
yeah. Man.
He's the man.
Yep.
So what you got up here is called a direct injected combustion ignition engine. So the injector administers fuel right into the combustion chamber. Okay? Now, that's not a new concept. Okay? You see Volkswagen with their TDI turbo diesel, Passat, or whatever they're putting the engines in, like direct injection, turbo direct injected, like this is the best thing since sliced bread. Okay? Detroit's been building a direct injected diesel engine since the 30s. Their 2 strokes were direct injected. Okay, so that's not anything new. Okay? Okay, so the fuel nozzle or fuel injector or spark plug in a gasoline engine case is riding directly in the combustion chamber. Okay, so when the spark plug fires, and we talked about this, what is it about the spark plug that ignites the fuel-air mixture? What does the spark plug do to light off that mixture?
You create a really high amount of heat.
No, it sends electricity to ground.
Yes, it does. Now, what does that generate?
Heat.
Anybody know about how much?
30,000.
About 30,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's all heat. Now, the popular misconception about a spark ignited engine was it was the pretty purple spark that lit everything off. That's just a byproduct. That's a result of the friction. Okay? If you look at lightning in a storm, it actually travels from the ground up to the top. But it's intensely hot, a lightning strike. If anybody's been around a lightning strike, and when I say around, I mean like from here to the fence. Okay, when it occurs, you'll experience a large amount of heat and a pressure wave, probably knock you off your feet. Okay, as a result of heat traveling through an insulator. Now, that sounds a little odd, but that's exactly what lightning is. Okay, I've heard from various scientists in different writings that the amount of electricity in a lightning strike could power a major city. Whether that's true or not, I don't want to find out. Right?
Does it bother you guys how compression could actually ignite a fuel as thick as diesel?
Not really.
I mean, when I first learned about it, it bothered me. I'm like, the diesel instructor explained it, and he said, yeah, it's compression that ignites it, blah, 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 and he ran over it.
Yeah, but you have to figure how the fuel is administered. It's administered in a very fine atomized spray.
Yep.
So it's not like you're trying to light off this cup of diesel fuel. You'd never get that to light off. But by atomizing it, spraying it, it mixes better with the oxygen molecules in the combustion chamber, and that's what allows it to set off.
Yep. You ever see those pipe cleaners? You know those like really rigid pipe cleaners with like the brittle?
Yeah.
Imagine like holding on to one of those and squeezing it really hard in your hand, and then someone just yanking it right out of your hand. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I imagine when the diesel fuel is injected into that highly compressed air. That amount of friction when that fuel hits that air.
It's not the friction of the fuel coming out of the nozzle.
No, but it helps.
It's the friction created by the compression. Okay, the nozzles are actually very, very small,
Holes.
7/10,000ths of diameter holes. And now the injection pressures have gone up. It used to be you'd have a pop-off pressure on an injector of about 2,000 pounds per square inch. Now pop-off pressures are getting upwards of 60,000 pounds. That's why these new engines, you don't bleed the injector system by loosening a fuel line. Bad idea. Okay. Now, in the early days, think early 80s Chevrolet diesels, they suck. They make great boat anchors or yard ornaments, but as far as an engine, they were horrible. They suck. Chevrolet wanted to get into the diesel engine market, so what they did is they took their 350 cubic inch gasoline motor, took the injectors out, took the spark plugs out, put injectors in when spark plugs went, took the distributor out, and put a rotary diesel injector pump in there, and they called it a diesel. Okay. Problem was, nobody down there at Chevrolet took into account the extra forces working in the combustion chamber, and that engine was so bad, it would literally pull the head bolts out of block. Okay, and they were losing their tailpipe and warranty. In fact, if you had a diesel-powered product from General Motors in the early to mid '80s, if you were having engine problems with it, you could take it to Chevrolet and they put a new gas engine in it for free just to get rid of you. Okay, that's how bad it was. Okay, Oldsmobile had it in the Vista Cruiser wagon. This is all before pickups and SUVs. So if you pulled a trailer, you probably either had a big station wagon with the tow package. Okay, and Oldsmobile's was the Vista Cruiser. It was a tank. It had a 3/4 ton axle in it, not a 3/4 ton truck. I mean, it was a tank. The diesel variant sucked. Couldn't pull its way out of a paper bag. Yeah, look up 1969 Vista Cruiser, Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser. Okay. So one of the major problems with that motor was it was what they call indirect injecting. So the injector would ride in a small pre-chamber in the head with a very small orifice or passage into the main combustion chamber. And the way this worked, allegedly, was the injector would inject fuel into a small pre-chamber. So as the piston came up, it would compress air in the main chamber, it would compress air in the pre-chamber. The charge from here would come down